Okay, so what if you had an AI that didn't just advise you, but could actually act for you, like a digital chief of staff? Today we're diving into OpenClaw, a project that is a huge, huge leap forward in AI. But here's the thing, it's incredibly promising, but it's also, as we're about to see, potentially really dangerous. This is not just another chatbot, folks. This is something else entirely.
I mean, really think about that question. What if your AI could genuinely act on your behalf? Not just, answering your questions or spitting out some text. I'm talking about taking real, tangible action, creating files on your computer, running code, sending emails, and actually knocking out complex goals, all without you having to constantly supervise it. That is the massive difference between a passive chatbot and a true autonomous agent.
And that jump takes us straight to this idea of a 24/7 AI employee. The best way to really get what makes this new breed of AI so revolutionary isn't to talk about it in theory. It's to look at what it's already doing out there in the real world.
So check this out. This is a real-world example. One user gave their OpenClaw agent a simple task: buy a car. The agent just went to work. It started researching fair prices on Reddit, it searched all the local inventory, and then it started emailing dealerships. It literally negotiated a deal on its own that saved the user more than $4,000. This isn't science fiction. This actually happened.
And it gets even crazier. In another case, an agent saw a post from Elon Musk about a prize for a new feature on X. Totally unprompted, it built, tested, and submitted the code for that exact feature for its owner's software product. It did the whole thing overnight, while the owner was completely asleep. This example just perfectly shows how it can handle an entire workflow from start to finish. Instead of just one little task, it can manage the whole shebang of booking podcast guests. We're talking researching people, digging up their contact info, firing off outreach emails, and even handling the calendar invites. It's a true digital employee. So yeah, with capabilities like that, it's really no surprise that OpenClaw blew up. It became way more than just a tool. It became a full-blown phenomenon. And the way it grew was just explosive and honestly kind of chaotic. Understanding that story gives us a ton of context for why this thing is such a big deal. What's wild is just how fast this all went down. I mean, in a single week, the project had 3 different names. It started as Claudebot, but Anthropic, the company behind Claude AI, gave them a polite nudge about the name. So it became Moltbot. But that didn't last, and a couple days later, it was reset to OpenClaw. And all this chaos was happening right as it was going viral, thanks in part to this thing called Moltbook, which was a social network built for AIs to talk to each other. Insane, right? And when I say viral, I am not kidding. By March 2026, the project had racked up over 247,000 stars on GitHub. That makes it one of the fastest-growing open-source projects in history. This wasn't just some niche developer tool. It was a full-on movement. So what exactly is this thing? Well, the official term is an autonomous agent. And unlike a chatbot that just gives you information, an agent like OpenClaw can actually do things, real-world tasks, right on your computer. It's not just talking, it's doing. And that ability to act on its own without you holding its hand is the absolute game changer. But that ability to act locally on your machine? Well, that brings us to the great debate at the very heart of the OpenClaw story. Where should an AI agent actually live and work? On your own computer or safely tucked away in the cloud? It might sound like a nerdy technical detail, but the answer has massive implications for power, for privacy, and especially for security. All right, let's break down the 2 ways this can work. A local agent, which is what OpenClaw is, runs right there on your personal computer. Now this gives it incredible power. It has direct access to all your files, your passwords, your apps, everything. But, and this is a huge but, you are 100% responsible for security. On the other hand, a cloud agent runs in what's called a sandbox, basically an isolated computer in the cloud, totally walled off from your personal data with a company handling all the security. This quote from an SVP at the security company Sophos just hits the nail on the head. He said, "A local agent is more like Jarvis from Iron Man than Siri or Alexa." And that's exactly right. It's not some simple little assistant. It's deeply woven into your system and can do pretty much anything you can do on your machine, which is both its biggest superpower and its biggest weakness. So here's where the rubber really meets the road. With a local agent like OpenClaw, you're the one in the driver's seat. You're managing the super high-risk security, you're doing all the manual setup, and you're juggling API keys and costs for different AI models. The trade-off? You get total unrestricted access to all your local data. With a cloud agent, it's the opposite. Security and setup handled for you. But data access is locked down to only what you provide for a specific task.
And that high risk we keep mentioning with local agents? Yeah, that's not just a theory. The viral success of OpenClaw has created what a lot of experts are flat out calling a security nightmare. It really shines a spotlight on the real-world dangers of handing an AI the keys to your entire digital kingdom.
Let's just start with a number, 341. Within just a few days of OpenClaw exploding in popularity, security researchers found 341 malicious plugins in its marketplace. And these weren't just buggy add-ons. They were specifically designed to steal your data or install backdoors on your machine.
So researchers basically found 4 critical gaping holes. First, that unrestricted local access means if an agent gets hacked, the attacker gets everything. Second, they found hundreds of user-run agents just sitting exposed on the open internet with zero protection. Third, as we just saw, that plugin marketplace is like the Wild West for malware. And fourth, the blast radius of an attack is massive. An attacker doesn't just steal a bit of data. They can take full control of your super powerful AI agent.
You know, sometimes the risks aren't even about malware. They're about weird, unintended consequences. In one bizarre case, a student set up his agent just to explore some AI platforms. He found out later that it had created a dating profile for him on a service called MoltMatch and was actively screening dates for him. It did all of this without him knowing, which brings up a really creepy question. When an agent acts for us, who's really in control? I think the big takeaway here is that this is not a toy. And this warning, this comes from one of the project's own maintainers. It's a pretty stark admission. They're basically saying, look, if you're not a technical person who knows their way around a command line, you could be putting yourself in serious danger by using this.
Which really brings us to the core tension of this whole thing. OpenClaw is a story of incredible power, but also incredible peril. And at the end of the day, it forces all of us to think about how we're going to balance that risk and reward for ourselves.
Now, to be perfectly clear, it's not like local agents are just a bad idea across the board. They make a ton of sense for certain people. For developers and researchers who are experimenting in a safe, controlled environment, they're amazing. For privacy advocates who, for whatever reason, cannot use the cloud, they're the only game in town. But you notice the theme here, right? These are expert use cases.
And so, that leaves us with this final question. On one hand, you've got this incredible promise. An AI that can negotiate a car deal, write code while you sleep, and manage your life. But on the other hand, you've got the peril. The gaping security holes, the malicious code, the weird unintended consequences. So as this tech keeps rushing forward, we all have to ask ourselves, is getting the ultimate AI assistant really worth taking the ultimate security risk?